Have you ever been struck by the quiet grace of those who walk through life alone? They don't broadcast their social lives or chase after invitations to fill their weekends. Yet, there's a magnetic quality about them, a serene confidence, a sense of peace that feels almost untouchable. In a world where social currency is measured in follower counts and friend lists, solitude can be mistaken for failure. We scroll through galleries of smiling faces and a quiet whisper asks, "Am I missing something?" But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if being alone doesn't mean being unloved, but being perfectly aligned with oneself? This isn't a story of pity, but of profound understanding. Because the people who keep a small circle often share a set of extraordinary qualities, traits the world tends to overlook, but which reveal a rare and formidable depth of character. And when you begin to recognize these in yourself, you may see your own solitude in a completely different light. It begins with a foundation of unwavering truth, authenticity. People who are comfortable in their own company don't shapeshift to fit in. They don't pretend to like what the crowd likes just to belong. They are anchored to their own values, even if it costs them popularity. I once met an older gentleman named Richard in a small Vermont cafe. He was in his 70s, living a quiet life after his wife had passed. When I asked if he ever felt lonely, a gentle smile touched his lips. He confessed that while he missed good conversation, what he never missed was the performance. That answer stayed with me. Richard explained that for most of his life he had felt the pressure to say yes to family events he dreaded, to work parties with people he didn't connect with. But with age, he realized that being genuine was worth more than being liked. When you're young, he said, you think fitting in keeps you safe. When you're older, you learn that honesty gives you peace. And that is the heart of authenticity, peace with yourself. So many of us bend under social pressure, wearing different masks for different audiences, terrified of disapproval. But those with few friends have often chosen a different path. They would rather walk alone in their truth than with a crowd built on false agreement. This takes courage. It's far easier to nod along, to laugh at jokes you don't find funny, to stay silent when something feels wrong. But for the authentic soul, such compromises are impossible. They may lose company, but they gain an unshakable self-respect. You see it in the small details of their lives. Their homes reflect their spirit, not fleeting trends. Their conversations are honest, sometimes direct, but never hollow. Authenticity acts as a filter. It naturally reduces the number of people around you, because not everyone can handle the light of honesty. Some will walk away when you stop pretending, but that isn't loss. It is clarity. From this bedrock of authenticity, a second quality naturally grows, a fierce and gentle independence. In an age where every moment seems to cry out for validation, independence is a quiet rebellion. We see people who need likes to feel seen, messages to feel wanted, constant contact to feel secure. But those who can be alone without anxiety possess a freedom that is almost sacred. This isn't just about living by oneself. It's about emotional sovereignty. It's the art of not needing another person to complete you, but choosing to share your life with those who complement you. Consider Emma, a woman I met who, after retiring, found that most of her friends were merely colleagues. The calls stopped when the office chatter faded. For a time, she felt abandoned. Then, she decided to travel alone. Her first solo trip was to Scotland. She described the terror of sitting in an airport cafe, watching laughing groups of travelers while she nursed her tea in silence. But by the third day, something shifted. She began to revel in her own company, visiting the museums she wanted to see, eating where she wanted to eat, moving at her own rhythm. For the first time, her happiness was entirely in her own hands. That is independence, when your emotional well-being is no longer held hostage by the attention of others. Many people fill their lives with noise because they fear the silence. They need distraction, because when everything stops, they are forced to meet themselves. Independent people are not afraid of this meeting. They know that silence isn't an empty room, it is a mirror, and they have the courage to look at their own reflection. This strength doesn't make them cold. In fact, it makes them capable of deeper love, a love given freely from a place of abundance, not of need. I remember a story of an old sailor who lived alone by the sea. When asked why he never remarried, he replied, "I'm not lonely, I am full." This inner fullness, this independence, redefines how one views connection. It's no longer a search for rescue, but a quest for resonance. This brings us to the art of selectivity. It is a common mistake to see a small circle as a sign of being antisocial. More often, it is a sign of being profoundly pro-social, so much so that one refuses to accept a diluted version of connection. They don't collect acquaintances, they curate bonds. To them, friendship isn't about quantity, but about quality. It's not about how many people attend your party, but who shows up when your world falls apart. A woman named Clara learned this after a painful divorce. The moment her life became difficult, most of her so-called friends vanished. Only two people remained: a neighbor who brought her soup, and an old colleague who would simply check in. Years later, Clara said she had finally stopped confusing company with connection. She began to choose her circle with care. Her friendships became fewer, but they were forged in honesty, not convenience. That is selectivity, the wisdom to know who adds to your life and who only takes from it. Many people tolerate draining relationship out of a fear of being alone, but those who understand solitude refuse that trade. They would rather walk a quiet path alone than sit in a loud room with people who don't truly see them. This isn't arrogance, it's self-preservation. A man named Luis once told me, "I used to try to be everyone's friend, until I realized not everyone deserves access to my peace." He began to treat his time and attention like a treasure, something given, not owed. He stopped feeling drained. The few friendships he kept were rooted in loyalty and mutual respect. People like him don't shut the world out. They simply filter it, understanding that one or two genuine friends are worth more than a crowd. They tend their social circle like a garden, small, carefully cultivated, and full of life. And in the quiet spaces created by this careful curation, another rare quality has room to flourish: introspection. When the outer world grows quiet, the inner world begins to speak. You begin to explore the vast landscape of your own mind, your memories, mistakes, emotions, and values. You learn to understand yourself in a way that is impossible amidst constant noise. Introspection is not sadness, it is awareness. It is like sitting by a perfectly still lake and, for the first time, seeing your own reflection with absolute clarity. A retired professor named Helen, who lived in a small cottage filled with books, would sit by her window each morning and write. When I asked why, she said, "It helps me keep track of who I'm becoming." We evolve constantly, she explained, and unless we stop to look inward, we might not notice how far we've traveled. That is the gift of introspection. while others seek validation outside themselves, the introspective look within. This is why so many great thinkers and artists were solitary. Their insights were born not from chatter, but from silence. Solitude becomes a classroom where you learn to respond with wisdom instead of reacting with impulse. What some fear as thinking too much is, in fact, the very work of the soul. This deep self-understanding, born from quiet reflection, becomes the fertile ground for the final, most transformative trait of all: growth. Authenticity lays the foundation. Independence builds the walls. Selectivity guards the gate. Introspection opens the window to the soul, and all of it serves a single, powerful purpose: growth. Real growth rarely happens in comfort. It comes from learning to face discomfort. As the philosopher Seneca wrote, resistance is an opportunity for virtue. For the solitary soul, what others see as isolation becomes a training ground for strength and clarity. It is like climbing a mountain. The air is thinner, the path is harder, but the perspective you gain is something the valley can never know. A man named Gregory, who retired to a quiet town by the sea, described it as the difference between existing and living. When I was younger, he said, I was surrounded by people, but I didn't know myself. Now I see everything more clearly. The colors of the sunset, the rhythm of the waves. It's like I'm finally awake. That is what this growth looks like. An awakening. It is the realization that solitude isn't a punishment, but a preparation. It's where wisdom matures, wounds heal, and the spirit strengthens. People who walk this path carry a quiet dignity. They don't rush, compete, or envy. They understand that life is not a popularity contest, but a journey toward inner fulfillment. This journey doesn't make them bitter. It makes them gentler. They stop judging others harshly, because they understand the silent battles everyone is fighting. Their peace speaks louder than their words. And that brings us back to where we began. Having few friends is not a weakness. It can be a profound reflection of strength, wisdom, and growth. It may mean you have chosen quality over quantity, truth over popularity, and peace over noise. So if you sometimes wonder why your circle is small, take a breath. Perhaps it's not because you have failed to connect, but because you have learned to connect more meaningfully. Perhaps you are like Richard, who found peace in authenticity, or Emma, who discovered freedom in solitude. Perhaps, like Clara, you learned to be selective with your heart. In the end, people with few friends often live deeper lives. They know that being alone is not the same as being lonely. They have built an inner world that is strong, calm, and rich with meaning. If this resonates with you, know that you are not alone in your journey. You belong to a rare kind of soul who chooses consciousness over conformity. You have learned that your value isn't measured by how many people surround you, but by how deeply you know yourself. And that is something truly extraordinary.